What happens when you outgrow the business model that launched your career? Today's episode is all about making the leap from franchisee to founder. We're joined by Eric Heipel, owner of Heartland Painting, who made that exact move after more than a decade of running a successful franchise. He's here to share why he stepped away, what he's building now, and how taking control of his brand opened the door to bigger opportunities. Welcome to Behind the Brand, the podcast for small business owners, solopreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs who are ready to start strong, stand out, and stay bold. I'm Taylor.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Isabella, and we're part of the powerhouse team of marketers at Moxie Creative.
We're taking you behind the scenes to explore what it takes to build and grow a memorable brand.
Ready to get behind the brand? Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Brand. Today I'm sitting with my best gal Kelly, and we're joined by one of our longtime clients, Eric Heipel.
Excellent.
Eric, welcome.
Good to be with you too.
Thank you. We're so happy to have you here. Really, I think where I'd like to start is just to get a little introduction of you, Eric. You tell us a little bit about your journey in the painting industry and how you ended up as the owner of Heartland Painting.
Sure. Well, I actually did not start my career as a professional painter. I was in the nonprofit world, so actually a fairly good parallel to being a business owner, right? At least the first few years. Nonprofit sets you up well for that.
Not making a profit and nonprofit are two different things. I've
right.
learned that.
Right. One is a business model. The other is just a status, IRS status.
Right.
So, no, I was in the nonprofit world in Christian camp ministry.
Okay.
And so just kind of got to the end of that journey and decided it was time to do something different. And so I looked at opportunities. You know, what does a 40-something age guy with no corporate experience, you know, and a family to feed, what do you do? So I just looked at different opportunities. And franchising, once you start looking for business opportunities, you realize, wow, the whole world is franchised practically, it seems. So one thing led to the next, and painting seemed like an attractive industry. I enjoy working with tradespeople. I do have a little project management experience. And so it just seemed to be a good fit. Got into the franchising world.
Yeah, wonderful. And that was clearly a great launch pad for you into the painting industry. But they're not necessarily built for freedom and flexibility and being able to call the shots, right? You do have to kind of follow a certain set of standards.
Yep.
And so, you know, I'm not completely familiar with how the franchisee model works. I don't know, Kelly, if you are.
I know a little bit.
But
I mean, there's a lot of pros to it, especially when starting out, right? They provide the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think from the standpoint of somebody that's leaving a steady paycheck job to get into a business opportunity, it's mitigating your risk, right? Because it's a proven business model. So, and you're right. If you follow the system, chances are you're going to have success.
Yeah, and they offer ongoing support, which you found you pay for as you go. But they have everything that's kind of done for you, or most things are done for you. Correct?
Well, that's the idea. And I'm not sure all franchises do a great job with that. Some are better than others. I think the well-known brands out there, say McDonald's, for example, it really is very systematized. The franchise I bought into was a little bit more affordable. And I think as a result, it wasn't as sophisticated or advanced. In fact, there were a lot of systems I found that were missing, and I had to bolt on just through some other training and participation in some other associations. So actually those were some of the frustrations, quite honestly, that led me to want to leave the franchise system, because I just didn't feel like I was getting a lot of value.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good to know. Kind of leading into that, at what point did you start to feel like, okay, maybe it's time for something different? I've been doing this for so long. I've learned all of this along the way. Now I think I can go out on my own and start something new.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I'm a little embarrassed to say that I hadn't been contemplating that for years. It came up to the point of my renewal, and actually I was about a year past my renewal, and I thought to myself, I haven't heard anything from my franchisor about renewing, which I think spoke a little bit to the fact that they weren't super on the ball.
Yeah.
So anyway, I initiated some conversations, and they had a turnover in leadership, and I had just asked some questions about, hey, what's the future for supporting a little bit larger franchisees like myself?
Because you were pretty successful with this franchise here.
I mean, I had been among the top 10 of the 150 or so franchisees
that's
for a while.
Yeah.
So I was looking for kind of a forward-thinking plan to help us scale our businesses. They were really good at helping beginners start their business, but what about people that have been in it for a while? So, and I didn't hear a real coherent plan. So I thought, well, this is dumb. Why am I even considering this? When I think of the franchise royalties that I'll be paying in the next decade if I renew, it was a huge amount of money.
And
so
then it was a 10-year kind of
it would
contract?
would have been another 10-year commitment.
Okay, so you were forced to think about it because of that. Just like renewing a lease. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're like, oh, do I want to stay here?
Yeah, right.
Yep, exactly.
So obviously, Kelly knows this, and I know it a little bit just from like being a part of the start of Moxie. It's scary to, go out on your own. And yes, you were, out on your own, so to speak, as you were kind of your own boss. But moving from your franchise to Heartland Painting, that was solely just you. What were some of the feelings that you were having around like that decision?
Well, yes, I was completely relaxed about the whole thing.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. The biggest concern, of course, is all of my customers that I had built up over the years, and if there was some brand recognition in the area, how much of that would carry over?
Repeat customers. It wasn't
Yep.
just
We don't want to
I didn't
confuse
say.
the marketplace that, your business closed. You were just changing your name.
Exactly. Yeah. So clearly communicating with our existing clients and the community to the best of our ability that we're still here. We're just having a name change. That was the biggest thing. And we've kept, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but we've kept in touch with our client base, I think, pretty well, at least compared to a lot of painting contractors who maybe they're doing well if they send like a postcard or something at Christmas time. We had a regular newsletter, an email newsletter, a printed newsletter, and some other communication. So we kind of leveraged that and made sure through multiple methods that our folks knew that, hey, we're going to be changing our name.
But we're still here. for
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
We are still here for you.
So a couple other things, though, I can remember during it was, what were you going to have to redo? Remember we talked about this, and you talked to me with pretty early when you were thinking about it, and then when you needed to do it, we did it pretty fast. But what does changing your name entail, right? Changing your signs, you had a fleet of vehicles, your
Correct.
website, like
Business
it's not
cards,
just like
stationery,
yeah.
Thank you
Yeah, you're not
envelopes.
just submitting something with the state.
No,
I mean, it's
no.
a lot.
And it has a price tag attached, correct?
It does. And it's a big number, reprinting all of that collateral.
Yeah, I mean, that has a price tag attached to it.
Part of the price tag, too, is just it's a very time-consuming process. And just for example, too, like choosing a new name, that's something I didn't have to do before. That was an interesting process. It was a lot harder than I thought. And of course, I tapped into my family, and then, the more people you ask, of course, probably the worse it gets. But you're stuck with that name, and you care about it, so you want it to be the right name.
And you were a little bit on a deadline too. I think you had a couple months and you wanted to make the change.
Yep, it was
And-
winter time. It was a good time to make all these
Yeah.
Right.
adjustments.
And then I think it was you wanted to have it before the CMBA home show because you don't want to go to the home show
Yep.
with your old name
Yes.
and see all
Yep.
these people because you do get quite a bit of business from that show. And then all of a sudden, in a month you don't exist.
Right. Yeah, no, it was a great time to roll it out
Yeah.
for sure.
But I think, we've been with other clients that have done this. You did do it pretty fast, just so you know. You should pat
Yeah.
yourself on the
Yeah.
back
Okay.
a little bit. You did a good
Okay.
job. But what
That's
I liked
good to
is
know.
that you tapped into your network of helping you pick a name, but also like, hey, Kelly, do you think you guys can help me with this? And I'm sure you reached out to other partners you have to help you with the change. You can't do it all by yourself.
Right, and just
Yeah.
for the record, no other advertising partners. So
Right,
it was
exactly.
only you.
Right,
But,
exactly.
yeah, no, that was nice to know that I didn't have any questions about who I was going to go to help me with the branding piece.
And we almost knew, okay, this is what you have to change, this is what you have to do. And, during that process, that was just fun for us. And the tight deadline was just an extra little pop of adrenaline.
Yeah,
people
we
work better
are
under-
adrenaline
They
junkies.
work better under pressure, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. And we won a Silver Addy this year for that.
Right, I was very proud of you all for that,
Yeah.
and myself because I chose you.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And
So
you
I
helped
should
change
get
the
some
name.
credit.
And we
Yeah.
helped you with the name, thinking of the name and stuff. Anyways, that was fun for us too. We felt like it was our little baby, and then we sent you out to the home show with all those things.
One
And-
thing that I want to talk about before we kind of jump off the having to rebrand and all of that, one of my favorite parts about my job is the branding process and going through that with clients. So whenever we're chatting with a guest about that, I like to just ask, like, what was that experience like for you? And it's especially for you because, like you said, the last time you started a business, it was just provided to you. And now here you're the one, controlling the ship. And it's not easy. It's beyond picking a name. I mean,
Right.
picking a logo and what your brand is going to be for the end of time can be really difficult.
Yes. Well, and I was surprised, and I'm sure you don't want me to plug what you guys do, but
Please stop.
Yeah.
I was
Go on.
surprised by, like, when I was first confronted with all of the different options that your creative folks put together for me. I thought, there might be 4 or 5 like concepts to choose from, but
Well,
there
there's
were like
supposed to be.
50.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what happened when you were under pressure, just like the adrenaline.
No, we just
kicked
can't
in.
edit ourselves. Yeah.
So there were a lot of options. So that was, and again, you're stuck with this, right, for the next decade. And so there was some pressure to get it right. It was a fun process, yeah. And there were so many, I mean, it didn't look like it was the same group of people. I mean, there was such a divergence in all of the different concepts that came across. So anyway, was very, very impressed with that. And then all of the different, like, you gave me way more than I thought I would get in terms of, like, once we had selected the final logo, there was just much more that you did in terms of different variations of a different style. You gave me the style guide, which I'm sure is maybe typical to give a style guide, but there was just a lot more to it than
We only
I
do
thought I
that
was
for
gonna
people we like. So.
Oh, well, that's good. All right. So
I want
I'll
to bring up one more thing that deter you from leaving a franchise, and we won't get too much into it, but the legal repercussions, right? I mean,
Oh,
it's
yes.
hard to leave, and
Yeah.
what is yours? What is the franchise?
Yeah.
So that was another consideration.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And it's definitely the reason that many people don't, and they're trapped in the tractor beam of the franchise world. There was a legal process, and it was scary because I had never, been sued before. But that's just kind of a natural thing that most franchises do to keep people in the system. So they don't want you to leave,
Right.
Because if one leaves, then more will leave, and then they've got kind of a mess. So they worked hard to keep me in.
Right. You had to do those systems, your own systems. So
Right.
you had your information.
Exactly.
Had they have done those systems for you, maybe you wouldn't have had that easily access to your customers.
Sure,
You
sure.
know?
It was their lack of having I would say, a mature franchise system that
Yeah.
just made it certainly easier to leave. You're right. So much of what I had built over 10 years was my own. It wasn't.
Right. And so that made it a little bit of an easier transition for you.
Yep, definitely. And their marketing systems, and when I say marketing, I'm even thinking more like in the digital space, some of their strategies really weren't that great. In fact, some of them were, I felt, caused harm to my business. So just, again, getting away from that. At least at this point now, the only person I have to blame is myself if things don't go right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So kind of just moving on to maybe the advice portion of the podcast, and
Where you give me advice?
No, Eric, where you give us advice and you
Ah.
give our listeners
Our
advice.
listeners,
Yes. So if someone is maybe not necessarily, it doesn't have to be if they're thinking about leaving a franchise, but I think it is an important piece that you can share. Going back to the branding piece, how has having your own brand identity, how has that shaped things for your business? Like, do you think that it's something that's important for people to invest in, or can they get away with doing something maybe not as professional? What is your kind of take on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, my industry is probably a little unique, and maybe it just varies by the industry. Painting is not a super professional. It's not a professionalized industry, generally speaking. It's certainly getting more so, and you're seeing companies, especially maybe more in larger metro areas, that have a much more sophisticated approach and professional-looking vehicles and signs and all that kind of thing. But I think especially in this market here in St. Cloud, to stand out with a professional image is going to help our clients feel confident that the other part of their experience with us, which is the actual work and their experience with our team, is going to be consistent. So I just see it as a consistency thing.
Exactly. That was one thing that we always saw as part of your other brand, because we helped you do some marketing with that too, was that maybe it was a little more kitschy, or you could say less professional. It was just a different style, that it didn't necessarily match the integrity of your work. Like, you were doing work up here, but your brand was here. And so we always say we want the integrity of your brand to equal the integrity of your work. Now, I know we have talked about this in length. You don't want to look expensive. And
Right.
I get
That's
that.
that's the flip
But doing
side.
an icky brand costs just as much as doing a nice brand. And so having known you and known your background, that's what we wanted to do. We still wanted something approachable, something, friendly, but something professional. And I think the result is fun.
Yeah.
We're playing with colors, it's painting.
Yeah.
And it's not standoffish and doesn't look terribly luxurious or,
Right.
aloof, but it
I
looks
agree.
nice just like your work is.
Yeah, I think you guys achieved exactly what I wanted to. Like, it just feels clean, but it's also not over the top.
Right.
It's just kind of, I don't know, comforting, homey, whatever.
Folksy. You wanted folksy.
Folksy is what I like.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, again, still sticking with advice and then some of the things that just came up here, we just had a recent episode that talked about hiring and cultivating a team. And what has that looked like for you? And if you were to give advice to someone who's maybe in the trades or, this type of service-based industry that you're providing, like, how do you go about hiring and
Sure.
creating a team that lives up to your expectations, because you do have high expectations for the results that are being put out?
Yeah, it's a great question. Many people in the trades, as you guys probably know, are really struggling with personnel issues. Many people will say, "Oh, it's so hard to hire people." Some people just give up. I would say it's been an interesting journey. It's definitely gotten easier, I think, to attract really good people. And I think part of that just is as your business grows, your name recognition grows, then A-player people that I want to attract are, they've heard of us before.
Branding.
Yep, branding.
Yeah, weird.
And then I think too, like, one thing that I've really embraced in recent years is my role as owner in really creating and maintaining a culture that A players want to be attracted to. Part of that, there's multiple facets to that. One of them is jettisoning B and C players, or worse. Because A players don't want to work with C players or even B players. They want to work with high-level people. So a lot of this has just been learned through error over the years. But so just making sure the right people, we've heard the Jim Collins, good to great, get the wrong people off the bus, get the right people on the bus. And then there's just sort of this, I don't know if you call it a synergy or whatever that's created. But just really maintaining that culture, making sure that the people that you bring on, skills are one thing, but culture and like how they fit with your core values, that's huge. So that's been part of my process and who we hire. So our process is super rigorous now for bringing on just even painters.
Okay.
It's multiple interviews. It just scares the wrong people away. But the people that we really want, they're like, wow, this is crazy what they're doing to go through.
Well, it shows
to
that,
just vet
that
us.
you care.
Yeah.
Like, those people, and they're like,
Yep.
yeah, that's who I want to work with.
Yep.
So how many
Exactly.
people do you have on your team now?
So we're probably 12 employees. 6 of
Okay.
those are production. So
Wow.
I've got a couple of salespeople. And we are looking for an additional salesperson if one of you
Shameless
are
plug.
looking for a part-time gig.
Right.
Got an office person. We actually have a virtual assistant too that lives in Columbia that helps us with our appointment setting.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we've got a decent
a
sized
diverse
team.
part-time, full-time.
I like that. You have a mix of different employees.
Yes.
You have someone that you may be outsourcing some work to, office support staff, your sales team, and then your production team. That's really interesting. What's next for Heartland? Do you see, more growth on the horizon? Are things staying steady? What's the future look
Yeah,
like?
we have an aggressive growth plan to continue to scale the business. I think that brings value to our customers, to me as an owner, from just a lifestyle standpoint. When I say lifestyle, obviously, right, as a business owner, you want to earn more money, make a better living for your family, but you also want a good lifestyle to go around.
You don't
to
want
go
to be
with it.
working 60
No, I
hours.
don't. No, I want a reasonable work week.
Right.
And I also want to be doing in my company what I think the company needs me to do, not just what is the tyranny of the urgent. So one
Right.
decision that I made this year was to get out of sales almost entirely, and the sales estimating process. So I'm trying to build a sales team, which
you're
I'm
training.
now
Yeah.
the sales manager essentially, and training. Like today, just before I came, I was riding along with a guy that I had hired a year and a half ago, but had not since I hired him, had not ridden with him to an appointment once.
That's
So
cool.
that
Yeah.
gives me the ability to coach him and just help him improve his success. So
Yeah.
so anyway, back to your question, Taylor. What are our plans? Yeah, it's aggressive growth. You know,
So you have a plan.
we do. Oh yeah,
Wow.
we have a very
That's cool. I need to
we
get
have
one
a
of
very
those.
clear plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't have a plan.
I can help you.
Oh, good.
I'll be doing a podcast next week, and
Yeah,
we'll bring you on.
Student becomes the teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Well,
it.
we learn from each other,
That's
right?
the way it should be.
That's right.
Yeah, I like it. Well, Kelly, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything that you feel like we didn't cover that might be interesting to talk about?
No, I mean, I've known Eric since you started the franchise, and then know you now, and I remember
Yeah,
that.
spoiler, they met through networking group.
Yeah, we just.
Our episode next week is going to be about networking.
That's right. That's right. And became friends. But I remember his first year, and I was all of 4 years to a senior of owning a business, so I knew everything by that point. But he'd be like, I just people that just don't know about us. They don't know we're here, and you were just that antsy feeling
Yeah,
when
the
you're
deer-
ready to start, but nobody knows
Yeah,
about you.
the deer in the headlights.
Yeah, and I said, just, give it a year. It's going to take a year. Then suddenly you're like, yeah, it's getting busier. It's getting busier. So it's been fun for me to watch that, and then super fun to help you rebrand. I mean, we just wanted to get our hands on that brand for a long time.
It's been great, Kelly. The friendship, the support over the years, and the partnership. I mean, literally from day one, just a real encouragement to me. So appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
That's so sweet.
I know.
Pass the
Love it.
Kleenex.
Yeah. And you don't have to be in the same industry to support other
No.
business owners.
Absolutely.
It's lonely at the top, and
Yep.
we're really at the top.
Yeah.
We're way up here.
We can all relate with each other. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming in today.
My pleasure.
Your story is such a great reminder that the next chapter of your business doesn't have to look like the last one. You can always make changes. But before we leave, I have 2 questions that I need to ask you. These are questions that we ask every guest who comes on as a way to connect all of our episodes. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready for the hot seat?
I have
Okay.
not been, and I can vow that I have not been prepared in
You have
advance with these
not been
questions.
No.
Okay. What is your go-to business tip for others that are thinking about starting a business?
Great question. I think one of the keys is just making sure you have good business mentors to guide you in that path. Both you and I, Kelly, had a relationship with somebody from the Small Business Development,
Yes.
SBDC, I think it is.
Yep.
So,
totally
and
that's free.
Absolutely.
Business consulting. Yep.
And if you're a franchise, you obviously have maybe a leg up because you have that support system, but to definitely get a support system in place of key advisors to help you.
I love that. That's awesome. I may not be a business owner, but I can just attest to having a mentor in some capacity, Kelly, is extremely helpful on your professional journey. And then my last question is, what is one piece of advice that you've received that's made a difference?
I would say a piece of advice that I've received. A business with no plan is a plan with no business.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to have
That strategy
You have to
piece.
spend some time strategizing and planning.
Working on the
And-
business,
yeah,
not just
working
in
on
the
the
business.
business, yeah.
I'm pretty sure the SBDC person helped you with that. didn't they?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
me
I
too.
mean, but you hear that a lot. None of us wants to just own a job. So part of that is good planning and trying to replace yourself as much as possible. I think it's hard for a lot of business owners to give up not just control, but even just give up money. As I'm talking, I'm thinking more about my response here to make it a little bit more interesting or helpful. But I think a lot of business owners, you don't want to hire help because help costs you money.
Yeah.
But it's the hiring of the help that frees you to do the best thing you need to do for your business to help
make
it grow.
money. Right. Exactly. And maybe we don't know everything, and we have other people that might. You're supposed
for
to hire
sure.
people that know more than you.
Yep.
Definitely done that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So hire great people and don't be, I'd say do that sooner than later. I don't know. Is that advice
Yeah,
I got?
that's
I think
great.
it's advice I got. If it's not,
Advice you
it's
got,
advice
advice
I'm
you wanna
giving.
give?
Yeah.
It's all good.
It's all good. It's all good.
Excellent.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. It was so
was
nice
fun.
to sit down with you today and
Yeah.
learn a little bit more about you and your business and what you're doing at Heartland Painting. If you are out there listening or watching to this episode of Behind the Brand and you're feeling stuck in a model that no longer fits you, ask yourself, what would it look like to build something that's entirely your own? And who can help you get there? Thanks. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Behind the Brand. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend. If you didn't, share it with an enemy. To keep up with us, follow along on our socials. Links are in the show notes below.